should we wait for the attendees, right? Lana? Okay, we are having our first attendees. So let's wait until we have some attendees, like more attendees. We have only Jess for now. Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone to this session. We are happy to have all of you with us today. We are all coming together on one shared idea, the love of science. And today our session title is Early Career Scientific Diaspora of Southeast Asian Region, Opportunities and Aspiration. And we have our amazing panelists today with us. We have Dr. Abhi Veera Kumarsiva. He will be our moderator today. Dr. Abhi is chair in International Network for Science Advice Asia. Also, we have Dr. Orakanuka Panaraska. Dr. Anaruka is co-chair and IB policy manager at ASEAN, not Asian, ASEAN, Young Scientist Network and Technology Development Agency. And we have Dr. Ainul Nadhira Hanafiya. Dr. Ainul is postdoctoral research fellow at the Institute of Connected Communities, University of East London. And we have also Dr. Lee Wen Yao, a development scientist, advanced Manufacturing and Technology Center, ARTC, Agency of Science, Technology and Research. We have also with us wait a second. We have Dr. Jenny Lind Almaco. Dr. Jenny is Regional Project Director and ASEAN at AeroAccess Worldwide. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us today. And we are looking forward enjoying and learning from your amazing experience. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Abhi. Would you like to start?
Yes, I will. Thank you so much, Marwa. I will obviously introduce the speakers again to give some context into why we are here today. First of all, I'd like to thank SASTA, for organizing this really important event and encouraging and allowing the voice of the Southeast Asia to be in your conference. I think it really speaks very strongly about the need for inclusivity, and it's really apt when we are talking about how might we be able to encourage greater collaborations with the diaspora. The ASEAN or Southeast Asian Association of Nations really is quite unique. I noticed that in our participant group today, we have quite a number of members who are not necessarily from the region. So I'm going to just give a little bit of a context of what ASEAN is. So ASEAN actually is an organization that represents the commitment of 10 member states. And these are Brunei, Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Singapore, and Thailand. And they have a vision, and it's called their motto: one vision, one identity, and one community. That's because this region shares a lot of historical as well as socio-demographic commonalities, despite, of course, having their own historical differences. This region is still a region that is relatively young, socio-demographically, maybe not Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. but it is one of the most vibrant regions out there that is really focusing on the need for greater regional cooperation for assuring the acceleration of equitable and sustainable economic growth. While many Southeast Asian countries have amazing talent, what we have noticed is that our researchers have certainly, and you're going to hear it from all four of our panelists, they have benefited from transboundary research training, from various talent mobility programs. And through these initiatives, we are going to be able to appreciate how this has shifted their perspectives. But a study that was conducted in 2016, and this will be shared by Dr. Orakanok shortly, shows that although the majority of early career researchers have a global outlook, many in this region, the Southeast Asian region, have never had any experience of scientific training abroad. And this lack of international mobility and access to international resources, including funding, have been identified as a significant challenge. And so there's actually a slight disconnect. We have a lot of Southeast Asian researchers abroad. We also have significant number who have been trained abroad, but the vast majority still do not have that opportunity. And another important area is that how can we leverage on these groups of individuals who are based abroad, who have successful careers out there, who are pushing the boundaries of science? How might we use them, maybe not use them, but entice them or encourage them to play an important role in the context of science diplomacy? And really, how can we interlink the various stakeholders in order to advance the solutions at a national, transnational, and global level? So we're very lucky today that we have four amazing speakers who are very connected to the region, to their respective countries, but also have an amazing outlook because of their experiences. The first speaker is Dr. Orakanok Panraksa, and I'm going to take, each time I ask them a question, I'm going to introduce them so that we don't overwhelm with my monologue. Dr. Orakanok is, as Marwa mentioned, a policy specialist in intellectual property laws. But she plays a bigger role than that. At the National Science, Technology and Development Agency of Thailand, she plays a really important leadership role in the Technology Licensing Office. And since 2010, has played a key role in forming policy frameworks that help to promote and strengthen technology licensing officers, knowing that there is a strong impetus to translate the commercialization value of the research that is being invested by these countries. And in 2019, she was the first to be awarded the Global IP Champion Award from the Global Innovation Policy Center. She's also the co-chair of the Licensing Executives Society International. And she's also the co-chair of the ASEAN Young Scientists that represents the top young ASEAN scientists in the region. But also she was the past co-chair of the Global Young Academy, a non-profit organization with 200 top young scientists from all disciplines from around the world. She's also, a co-chair of multiple different projects. She's just coming back from co-chairing APAC Science Leadership Program. So you can see she probably does not need any chairs at home because, the number of co-chairs and chairs that she has in various different committees really is super impressive. And I always say that much of the initiatives that have happened within the space of really promoting young scientists, collaborations within the region, has all been led essentially by this woman, who I'm going to now pass the floor to maybe share with us the first real snapshot of young scientists in the region. And I think she's got a small presentation. And so, Dr. Orakanok, the slide is yours.
Thanks, Abby, for your kind introduction. I feel overwhelmingly kind of honored this afternoon in Thailand. Hello, everyone. I don't know who's going to be our audience from different part of the world, but welcome again to our panel. We all are excited to share with you the kind of culture and background of young scientists within ASEAN. And to kick off our panel today, I have agreed with Professor Dr. Abby that we should really touch on the study we have conducted since 2015. Then it would give you a kind of background information of why we have been driving this and working on this, championing young scientists. So this is everyone here. And then, so when I was the co-chair of the Global Young Academy that is based in Germany, but composed of 200 top young scientists from 6 continents. So back in 2014, we agreed that it is important for us who would like to learn to develop the career path of young scientists. So we ran the precursor Global State of Young Scientist study back in 2012. And then we received the kind of some statistic of the precursor study. We see that it's so important to explore deeper in the sub-region. ASEAN was the first to launch this project. And that's how I got to work with Professor Dr. Abby as the first project. So back then, we cover only 4 countries in ASEAN, even though we have 10 country nations. And that was because of their budget limitation and the time constraint. Anyhow, so just to really focus on the topic of today's discussion, this is a bit of the background of the respondents from 4 countries. And you could see that it includes Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. And we also cover several employment sectors with their respondents from who are females, like 52%. Now, like Abby has addressed that, across the globe, young scientists in ASEAN may have limited opportunities, but there are some and who want to live and also travel or have a chance to work overseas. So this is one of the serious questions that we ask about talent mobility. Do ASEAN scientists want to leave their country? And surprisingly, you will see that almost 70% say no, they would prefer to kind of stay in their home country. And the next few slides, you would see that what are the reasons why they want to leave the country and why they don't want to leave the country. For those who want to travel abroad, either for work, for internship, or whatsoever, where do they want to go? And please bear in mind that this study was conducted in 2015, and that was like 7 years ago. So the top country would be the United States, followed by the United Kingdom, and then Japan. The rest would be more like some countries in Europe. And what are the reasons why they want to leave the country? So if we could pick the top 3, it would touch on the acquisition of skills or new techniques, because eventually many of the survey participants, they were those who had a chance to study from overseas, graduate from elite universities from overseas, and once return home, they also want to acquire more knowledge and skill to more like upskill their knowledge. And then they also want to access to collaboration networks where many diasporas have such kind of opportunity, and also development of or continuity of research work. These are a few top factors why they want to leave the country. And now for those majority who said, no, I don't want to leave their home country, what are the main reasons? you can see from this slide over here that in Asia, we probably have to admit that family and friends are important. Cultural bond is so important for all of us. So being apart from family and friends are one of the key reasons. And then you could see that they are worried about work, about finding work after return to home countries, right? But you might hear from our friends and panelists today that they might view things slightly different because they are quite lucky to have the opportunity to work overseas. So I think that is pretty much about the kind of overview of the aspect of young scientists in ASEAN regarding talent mobility and the opportunities they have had. This will be a brief slide background from my end for the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, O, for really helping us to frame the context, right? And I think for the most part, it'll be interesting to understand whether the pandemic has changed this, or over the last 5 years, whether opportunities for transboundary travel and collaborations have been enhanced. And we're lucky we have quite a number of speakers here today that can actually answer this question. So I'll move on to our second speaker, and he is Dr. Lee Wen Yao. And Dr. Lee Wen Yao is a development scientist at the Advanced Remanufacturing and Technology Center, ARTC, of A-Star, Singapore. The ARTC is a translational research institute with numerous industry members, and I've had the privilege of visiting ARTC once, and super impressed by its facilities, and I can understand that it fits really well with Dr. Lee Wen Yao's interest in simulations, digital twins, operational research, aerospace, land transport, and electrification. And his career in engineering and research includes working as a systems designer in the civil aerospace business of Rolls-Royce and a research fellow at the University of Cambridge in the area of digital manufacturing methods. He holds a PhD and MRes from the University of Cambridge, as well as an MEng from Imperial College of London. And he's a chartered aeronautical engineer and a member of the Royal Aeronautical Society. But one of the reasons why we have asked him to come today was because of that big decision that he made to come back to the region after establishing a very successful portfolio in the UK. Another important fact about Dr. Lee Wen Yao is that while many of us as students spend our time enjoying the best times of our lives, doing things that I will not mention on this webinar, Dr. Lee Wen Yao and our other speaker that you'll hear later, Dr. Ainul Hanafia, played a very significant role in initiating a platform or forum to engage Malaysian, Singaporean, and researchers from different ASEAN countries to come together and to discuss and to present their work and to really promote that regional discourse. And Dr. Ainul and their members in Cambridge at that particular time, their efforts became the precursor of what is called the ASEAN Emerging Researchers Conference today. So welcome Dr. Lee Wen Yao to the panel today.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to ask you this question. Why did you choose Singapore over Cambridge?
All right. Oh, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I think, you've really explained my profile very, very well. Hi to everybody on the call. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And I think the question, why Singapore over Cambridge? So I think perhaps that question isn't phrased in a way that sort of inform my thought process. So 2 years ago, I made the decision to move back to Southeast Asia. So that was intentional. But once that decision was made, I then looked around for a job, and the job that I picked just so happened to be in Singapore. So I didn't pick the country per se, but I would say that there were very strong reasons as to why I picked this particular job. So the first reason, as Abi sort of alluded to earlier, was the nature of the center that I'm a part of at the moment. So the ARTC is, as Abi said, a translational research institute. And it's been something that I've personally benefited from, the model of research here. So my PhD was also funded in the same way, where I worked with an industrial partner in a university, and the research that was done was very intentionally meant to be translated out into the real world. And that's essentially the model around which the center is built. So it's that uniqueness of bringing together industry problem statements, working on them to a technology readiness level that is sufficiently high for it to be adopted back in industry. So a lot of technology that is developed in the universities tend to sort of, die off at about technology readiness levels of about 3 or 4. Beyond which the funding required and the capability required to refine it further sometimes is not available in the university. And that's where the ARTC comes in. We take in IP ideas and we work with researchers in universities, and we refine and develop the ideas further to the point that it can be adopted by industry and also by the wider public. So that's the first reason, is the uniqueness of the model of the center I'm a part of. And reason number 2 is technology readiness, as in both in terms of technology generation and technology adoption in Singapore. So in Singapore, there's a very strong presence of big multinational companies that work in very specific industries that require very high technology. For example, speaking more personally, the aerospace industry. There's a lot of repair technology, a lot of maintenance and manufacturing capability in Singapore that is not available in the rest of the region, not yet at least. And that has created an environment where industrial research thrives very nicely. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's provided for by the government that helps with industry gearing. And what I mean by that is, if industry gives, say, $1 million to an organization to do research, the government then matches that with $1 million more. So the research institute gets 2 million to do wonderful stuff, and the problem statements comes from industry, and that investment pays off eventually when the technology goes back to the sponsor. And this is where involvement from industry is very important, because it helps guide the research and in a direction that it will eventually be adopted. So those are really my 2 points, really. So the nature of academic and industry research in the center, and also the technology readiness in the region. And that's how I ended up in Singapore.
Great, thanks, Wenyang. Absolutely. I wasn't asking you to explain exactly what are the variations, but I think you bring up a really good point, and I think this is something that everyone can resonate. It is about being relevant, right? And in this case, making sure that your research actually translates to something more than just citations and H-index, but actually translating it to an actual impact, and that collaboration with the industry. And the second one, of course, it's the reality of resources, right? And we always say that when you talk about the STI ecosystem, Singapore is not necessarily representative of the ecosystem that is then all across Southeast Asia, but certainly a model that should be thought about. How might it be emulated, even if it's done at a smaller scale.
Yes.
But from a ASEAN, Southeast Asian background, about I hear from you that the drive is about innovation and science and having the resources to support. But you, to a certain extent, Cambridge also provided you with that, because you were working with Rolls-Royce, and it's also industry. From the perspective of actually being in Asia, has that actually changed your perspective, or even purpose/mission?
I think in some sense it has. So comparing the 2 communities that I was a part of, I mean, in the UK, there's obviously a very mature research ecosystem, and I think there's a certain pace that people have sort of gotten comfortable with, and also the certain sort of structure of funding, and it's a very established, very mature system. And if I were to compare that to Southeast Asia, and I come back and I come across colleagues from various countries, people who have also done wonderful achievements within the region. But I noticed that there's perhaps a stronger hunger to create something, and it's a lot. I find it on a personal level easier to sort of find colleagues who share the same enthusiasm in Asia, and so the reason why I came back, another thing on top of the reasons I just mentioned, was also that I personally see Southeast Asia as a region that is pretty ripe with opportunity. There's a lot of things that we have learned from our experiences abroad, certain technologies that are pretty obvious that we can adopt regionally quite easily. And those are really just wonderful opportunities to sort of to sort of close the gap between the two regions, but also making sure that what we can do contributes to the global collective knowledge. So yeah, so I think regionally great opportunity, and also like a lot of good hunger out there. I think it's just a matter of having that focal for everyone to just rally to.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Wen Yao. To all participants in this webinar, feel free to type in your questions, but I will also open later on. So if you're allowed to switch on your microphone, you will certainly be welcome to ask your question live. But otherwise, please type in your questions in the Q&A or in the chat box, and I'll be happy to field them in real time. Right, from someone who decided to come back after spending all that time abroad, we now have someone who is still going to decide to come back at some point, but has decided to still stay on, in the UK after she completed her degree. And she is, as I mentioned, also really critical in that Emerging Researchers Conference that I alluded to earlier. Our third speaker is Dr. Ainul Hanafia, who is a Cambridge graduate, did a PhD in public health, and also a master's from King's College London in mental health. And we all know how big this has been an issue over the last couple of years and how important it is. And she's currently a research fellow at the Institute for Connected Communities in the University of East London. Her research experience is in global health, but with a wider interest in mental health, community-based services and interventions, as well as children and young people's well-being. Besides being a very proud mother of a really, really cute daughter, Dr. Ainul is also, a really emerging leader for her expertise in process evaluation, qualitative and mixed methods research, and has had various different projects in various local and global health-related projects in the UK, India, Malaysia, and a few countries in Africa. So really, really cool portfolio that despite being in the UK and staying on in the UK, she still has a really amazing global reach. But I think I have to answer this question. I know you, and you are so passionate about making an impact in Malaysia and in the Southeast Asian region. So why are you not back yet?
Okay, thanks, Abi, for the really nice introduction of me. Well, to simply answer you is that besides being told not to come back, jokes aside, but honestly, it's really because, as you know, when y'all has mentioned before, resources. So my pathway into academia is really quite it's not really straightforward. I never even knew, I never knew what PhD was all about. I never knew what, to me it's like something that was beyond my reach. Okay, for me, masters, yeah, okay, I understand what masters does. That's that. But then because at King's College London, I did my dissertation was in stigma in mental health in Malaysia. So that was when my interest, started to kind of it started, my interest in mental health started specifically in Malaysia, having, like a understanding of how critical and how much help the system and people need. And then opportunity came about, for me to do a PhD at Cambridge with my, then supervisor, master's decision supervisor in King's College London. As she moved to PhD, she said, why don't you, no, sorry, as she moved on to Cambridge, she said, why don't you then do your PhD? Because clearly you have this interest and, clearly there is a need. And that's what I did. Again, the resources kind of like was given to me, and the opportunity was given to me, and I seized it. That's it. But after that, it was more of like, okay, so what next? Because for my PhD, I evaluated the implementation of the Malaysian mental health policy. And again, the more, as a lot of my colleagues would know, the more research you do, the more you realize there's a lot more to actually do. Sometimes it's a bit of a black hole, and you actually have to limit yourself. So that's when I actually when I was in Malaysia doing my data collection for my PhD, I spoke to people in the industry. I spoke to people in mental health, outside mental health, just academics, people in the government and things like that. And they said, well, look, mental health, if the interest in specifically mental health, there's not much resources. A lot of it is more in clinical, a lot of it is pumped into clinical sort of services, which is understandable because that's where the need is. And because Malaysia, as a country has limited resources in research, just in generally, that's the understanding that was kind of alluded to me. I then had to make the really tough decision of saying, okay, so maybe I need to look at it in a different way, where because like again, what Wenyo mentioned, the UK is very mature in its research ecosystem, especially the funding and things like that. There's plenty of opportunities, as you can see. Even though I'm based in the UK, research are being funded from the UK in India to African countries, to Europe and things like that. So that was when I see an opportunity, right? Maybe if I really want to look in a longer term of how I can contribute to Asia, Southeast Asia, to Malaysia, is for me to be here and try and kind of like tap in the resources available here. That is the main kind of reason why being in academia, I decided to remain here. It's
Great.
predominantly resources, and it's
Yeah.
a strategic, but yeah, without losing that kind of like network. That's why I do think still connecting to Southeast Asia as much as I can.
Yeah. Thanks. I know. I was just teasing you, of course. I think a lot of people equate patriotism with sometimes posturing and actually being in a place, right? But we also know that there are many ways in which we can contribute and actually display our patriotism, and it shouldn't be sort of interpreted as just because you're not in Malaysia or not in the region, therefore you don't care about the region. Just like how the virus doesn't recognize the boundaries, science also doesn't recognize boundaries, and the work that you can have wherever you do will have that relevance. And I think we will talk about the social science aspect and how that area needs to really grow in this region if we were to really compete in the global field. But I'm really honored to introduce our next and final speaker of today's forum, because I could spend the next 1 hour listing down all the awards, all the degrees. I mean, Dr. Jenny Lin, when I was going through your biography, you made me feel extremely inadequate and extremely underaccomplished. The number of your degrees, I just asked, like, oh my God, super accomplished individual. But I think the role that you currently play is extremely important. As the regional coordinator of EURAXAS worldwide, you provide an amazing platform for so many researchers, as well as scientific collaborative opportunities between researchers in this region and the European research area. And I think just to name a few recent awards, your Innovative Leadership Diamond Award and the Education Double Gold Award from the Global Women Inventors and Innovators Network, as well as the Marie Curie Social Impact Award for your work for peace, gender, and COVID response. And you're recognized as the top 100 influential Filipino women on LinkedIn. So I didn't even know LinkedIn gave these awards because clearly I've not won any. Just goes to show how relevant, how visible, and how connected you are. And I think, yeah, I want to give you the next couple of minutes for an opportunity to really help us understand what drives you to do what you do. I mean, you are an accomplished researcher, and yet now you've decided to play this conduit between the researchers in our region and researchers abroad, independent whether they're diaspora or not. Because we know the role of your access is facilitating many researchers through various mobility programs. But could you maybe explain to us, how have you seen this translated to actual, real capacity building and resource reinforcing in the home countries?
Thank you
Dr.
so
Jenny, the
much,
screen is
Abby.
yours.
Thank you. That was such a incredible introduction. I keep, looking at the back. Maybe it's another person being introduced just to check. But thank you so much for that. It's a pleasure always to be in a panel, especially with such an accomplished panel. And not only that, you see like this energy and this passion as well in this room, reverberating in the virtual space. So it's really incredible. So it's an honor to be here. So thank you. So to answer your question, yes, I've been in the intersections of being a researcher myself, but also like in a practitioner field. I've worked in peace and security and human rights as well, international development too. And my recent research is on migration. But then, of course, as you know, I am in Euraccess as a regional coordinator. So I think this is important because, for us who are part really of the scientific diaspora, whether we decide to, come back or not, or come back a bit or leave again, I think we are given this incredible potential to be, I love this word, these brokers, knowledge brokers, we are the bridges. So we build bridges between, societies. I believe that we create really beneficial transnational communities, or co-creating the creation of communities for both our host countries, if we are based abroad, but also for our home countries. So what we contribute, and this is the reason why I am very passionate also being regional coordinator of Euraccess, it's because, we are providing new structures of cooperation. So the innovation is there. It's ripe for the picking. It's also ripe for, to be replicated, to become more robust. As Dr. Lee Wen Yao was saying a while ago, also to make sure that we have this intersectional engagement, not only with the academic community or with the scientific community, but also involving the private sector. And also, I love this idea of citizen science, so getting, the whole community to be scientists in themselves, or to be fascinated with science, because that's really what we want to do. So like some specific examples that I see of, of personal stories or testimonials of people, especially coming from those from Europe, coming back to the country. You have an Erasmus alumna from Vietnam, after coming home and sharing and mentoring also young researchers, working also in migration and development, now decides, okay, I think I would like to take this further and study more about these migratory patterns and see, what are the societal challenges here, and doing the Marie Curie. So I'm very, very proud of that, because you see, on one hand, he came back, served, but then realized, okay, there is a lot of conversations that I'd like to be a part of, and and research questions that I'd like to answer to. There is also an MSCA, Marie Curie alumna in Thailand, who started as a PhD student, and then now mentoring new talent, and then doing staff exchanges. So you have like, he has interns that are now, you know, moving to Germany for a few months, getting engaged and coming back, all with this knowledge, new ways of thinking, new strategies of cooperating, but at the same time, and I think this is very important, contributing as well, you know, to the knowledge of Germany, also the ideas that they create. I mean, there's no, you know, limitation of ideas here in the region. A nice example that I also want to share is from, of course, from my home country, the Philippines. We have a program called the Balik Scientist Program. Balik means going back. And this is a project of the Department of Science Technology that encourages Filipino scientists, technologies, and experts to return home to the country if they had, you know, settled already elsewhere, and then to share their expertise in order to promote, you know, scientific, agro-industrial, and economic development. So you see all these things, and they're not happening in the vacuum, and it comes in multiple levels. And you create, you know, communities that are richer, stronger, and much more resilient because of these exchanges. So this is the reason why I'm so passionate about it, and I'm sure all of you are here too. And I'd like to continue this, you know, these actions together.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenny. And I think it's really heartening to actually hear real life examples of this impact. And I guess that's really your fuel for your efforts. I noticed that was actually a question by Dr. Ng Zenyi, and actually wanted to know about the field of genetics and what are the job opportunities and prospects for telomerase study related fields. So I suspect that this is a question that I think only I can answer. Because telomeres are essentially, for those of you who are not in biology, because today's panel is obviously multi-interdisciplinary. So telomeres are essentially caps that are actually on the ends of chromosomes, i.e. our human DNA. And basically 3 of our very famous researchers led by Elizabeth Blackburn, Carol Grieder, and Jack Szostak, they won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the function and the structure of telomeres and telomerases. So to cut the story short, telomeres are found to get shorter. So our DNA gets shorter as we grow old, as well as when there's physiological stress. And the idea behind this was that over the last 20 years is, you know, a whole industry on wellness, healthy aging, you know, has sprouted out from this. So Zenyi, to your question regarding this, if you actually go onto PubMed, I would actually actively ask you to search telomeres and look for the recent papers that are actually out there. You will see that there are quite a number of researchers in the region have been measuring the lengths of telomeres in Malaysia, in Singapore, and a few Southeast Asian countries. And also the effects of, say, for example, eating omega-3 fatty acids and other types of supplements to see whether this telomeres can be elongated, or at least the attrition can be slowed down. It is certainly not something we're going to talk to in detail because it's not a genetics lecture today. But, you know, Zenyi, thank you for that question, because that just tells you that when we talk about a scientific ecosystem, the scientific ecosystem is extremely heterogeneous. And a lot of times we talk about science, we think about, genetics, engineering, nuclear physics, you know, and really the natural, physical, scientific disciplines that has been invested significantly in this region. And there are opportunities, and I would, like I said, happy to take this offline. You know how to reach me. I'm Googleable, and we can talk about this. But I want to shift back this particular question to Aino. I know, you know, a lot of your work, especially in the context of public health and mental health, when you talk about the science in terms of the innovations and the solutions are there. For example, the vaccines are here, yet not just COVID-19. We are seeing a rise of previously eradicated diseases, not just in the developing world, but in the developed world as well. So can I, you know, ask you about what do you think of that state of social science gap that you really wish to see being bridged? But also, what do we really need to do besides investing more money in social science? Because we can't answer all the questions, as you rightly pointed out, there's so many unknowns. How might we strategize? And if the ministers of Southeast Asia were listening to you at this right moment, what would your first recommendation be so that we can attract more bright social scientists like yourself back to the region?
Okay, so that's two questions, right? First, you're asking about, you know, what we can do in terms of bridging the gap. I think a lot of it, well, it's a bit of social science, but a lot of PR, I would say. Miscommunication, I think, is the problem, is a rife problem, especially in a developed country, I would say, because there's just so many information out there. And this is a problem that, you know, scientists alike and even as well as, you know, social scientists need to work hand in hand and stop kind of prioritizing just your work. I think that there needs to be collaboration, multidisciplinary kind of collaboration. And I think we are seeing more and more of that, you know, where whatever work you do is being translated not to just impact, but then to also how do we then kind of what you call exploit, you know, our findings and how we can be creative. And, you know, and I can see it with our funders nowadays. They want you to have a very extensive kind of communication and dissemination plan. You know, how do you want to create this impact beyond just publications, beyond just, you know, conferences? Like, how do you truly get this message across out there to, you know, the public? How do we then, you know, try and counter kind of a lot of miscommunication? And I think, you know, personally, I believe, you know, working hand in hand with the media is a very important one because they play a big role. You know, it's like sometimes they take one line of whatever that's written in a paper or in a report, and then they will make it as their headline, when in reality, that's just our caveat, for example, of the study. So that's one. And then if, you know, a minister is right here, or, you know, the first thing I would say is to recognize the importance of not just, you know, medicine, of not just engineering, you know, the hardcore of what we understand of, you know, STIs, but also of how important it is, of how important public health is, because public health is a bit kind of, you know, it's in between. It is still within the area of medicine, but then it you know, the work it involves is a lot on social science, because understanding how something is done well, or understanding how we can you know, curb this problem, or, you know, it's public health is a very interesting kind of field because it's in between. And so recognizing that, you know, feels like mental health, feels like even arts, how we all can work together with, you know, the kind of like hardcore science, as what a lot of people always say, oh, you know, like biology, medicine, engineering, how we all can work together. So recognizing that we need to work together, and, you know, that we play a role as well. You know, social science play a role as well in getting all this information out, in you know, helping to eradicate problems and issues. That's one thing, recognizing. And number two, commitment. You know, just committing. Money is one thing, but then what I would say commitment to listening. Because I think, you know, sometimes it's like all you need to do is to listen to the scientists, because we are on ground in the field. We are doing the work. We are trying to tell you this is what we need, and it's not always money. It's, you know, if I were to say, hey, all you need to do is to just have a team that is willing to do the work, I can go and get the money, you know, because I'm in the UK, I can try and go get the money, but you need to commit your time. But you also have to commit to collaborate, to listen, and to kind of do things together. Again, it's about recognizing, you know, I think it goes hand in hand.
Great. Thanks, Anil. And I think that theme of interdisciplinary, the fact that none of these problems can be addressed by a single discipline. And I want to then go to Wenyao, right? Because Wenyao obviously is an ecosystem where resource is not a significant limitation. So the question I have then is, what are the limitations that is actually stopping that translation if it's not resource and if it's not the brains?
Right. Well, thank you very much for the question. So actually, so resource and brains can be limitations. I'm not saying they aren't, but I think more often than not, the challenges that we face in adoption is, I think, the level of trust people have to a certain level of technology, and also the lack of familiarity to it. So if you ever tried, going to a factory and telling them to do a process differently, a process that they've done for 30 years, and to them is okay, and you come along and say it's better. There's a lot of winning hearts to do. You have to be really putting yourselves out there and really pushing for the technology to be adopted. So I think that there's a softer side to technology adoption that we as a center generally struggle with. And I think that's where even the disciplines of social sciences are actually really critical when it comes to adopting new ways of doing things. So it's not really, and the other challenge we have is it's not really the brains, but perhaps is the circumstances around which the brains is required. So in a university, the limits of what you need to prove is that the concept works, and beyond which there's a whole host of other things that we need to take off before technology is sort of bought on by the public. And thinking about this in the pharmaceutical industry, the amount of clinical trials you need to do to get something approved is immense. And likewise, for most engineering projects, certification standards are really high and getting higher. And all of these challenges make technology adoption more difficult. But having said that, what I would say, I would suggest to people in the call and to the wider community is for all these eventual stakeholders to get involved early in the process. So people that will be adopting the technology, people that will be creating the policies, people that will be the ones paying for it, even the end users, tell and get involved with the researchers, with the technology developers, tell them what you need, tell them what needs to be done, and really to make that transition, that pipeline of technology as seamless as possible. Because right now, there's a lot of technology that can sort of get up to readiness level of 5, and then something that is just a critical showstopper, it just wasn't removed at the start, and it just kills the project instantly. It's things like that I think, having a multi-stakeholder invested party at the start will really help address a lot of these challenges.
Absolutely, and it fits back again, the interdisciplinary need. And sometimes we choose not to because it's easier to listen to our echo chambers, right? It's easy to talk to people that are going to agree and to avoid the concerns. All right, we've got a couple of questions, and I'm going to field that questions to our speakers. There's a question from Diana Hinchu, and it's directed to Dr. Jenny. So Jenny, thank you for your great intervention and the sharing. Could you share where we can find more details about the project you mentioned, Go Back for Filipino Scientific Diaspora? And Jenny, I'm also going to give you the opportunity to give a shameless plug for whatever your access initiatives that you have, because after all, we really want to engage our researchers to have the opportunities the diaspora has, but also what are the opportunities our diaspora can actually leverage upon. So Dr. Jenny.
Thank you very much, Abby. Yeah, thank you for the question. If you look, actually, if you Google it, Balik scientist, BALIK scientist of the Department of Science and Technology, you can see a lot of information there. I'm very happy that you're interested in it. It's not just the Philippines actually that does that. Different, all the countries, I think, in Southeast Asia also have their way in one form or the other. This kind of, really encouraging scientists to come back and give back. Whether or not they stay for good is of course another matter. I think just to connect to what we're talking about earlier, I just wanted to say just a few words. Like, I think we have to stop working in silos. We have to really work together and maybe guide each other to connect a little bit more. And I think it's also important to integrate the scientific diasporas, first of all, with the local councils. You always have these local development councils everywhere. So you don't have to start really nationally, because sometimes, the national discussions are maybe a bit wider. but maybe if we can be part of a local development council or a local development planning, you know, in the Philippines, you have the barangays. I think it's, you know, so you go there, go to the barrios, become part of this, these discussions as well. So shameless plugging. Your Access, as you know, it's an initiative of the European Commission. It's really for you, all of you here inside this room. We have capacity building seminars. One of the biggest ones would be in November. We have the European Union EU Research and Innovation Days in ASEAN. So it's a series of talks, panels, and workshops as well. Everything is, of course, at no cost, so you're all very welcome. The theme for this year is on the twin transition, so green and digital. So I think most of the people also here were involved last year. Thank you so much. And so we want to invite you. Also, there's a series of info sessions on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions that's happening in the first week of October. And then also on the European Research Council grants as well. That's also happening in October. I'm happy to share that Thailand just signed an implementing arrangement under the European Research Council. And I think this is significant because it's not just, you know, the European Union, you know, providing the funding here, but it's really Thailand investing also in their researchers, you know, especially in frontier science, giving a possibility for Thai researchers to become part of, you know, these excellent European Research Council funded projects. So that's something that you can also be inspired by. So please check our website. Also for the person a while ago who was looking for not on the technicalities, of course, Avi, but maybe on the actual research that they want to be part of. Please take a look at the Your Access website. We have jobs, funding. If you're looking for a partner, you're looking to host, us Southeast Asian institutions or institutions all over the world can actually host as well. So please make it a habit. Make checking Your Access a habit. Thank you so much for this space.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. If you can maybe just type in some of the links on the chat for our attendees, that would be fantastic. There's also a question from Naresh Kumar, and I think it's a great question because you know, he's actually asking whether there are actually opportunities you know, to really teach how to engage diaspora. You know, so the diaspora subject, or discipline, is it a recognized course or curriculum in the universities? And what are the possible challenges to work on that? And I think the best person for this is Dr. Orakanuk. You know, really, a lot of your efforts have been invested into talent management in Thailand. I mean, and you know, one other role that you currently play is that you are the strategic advisor to the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation of Thailand. And one, I know that Dr. Anak Lautamata cares a lot about the training of future scientists, training of the future talent. So what have really been the opportunities that you see, you know, because you've heard the biggest gaps is the failure of interdisciplinary dialogues, the silo mentalities, the inequities of access. And through your APEC Science Leadership Program, you actually drive all of this. So could you maybe share with us some of your thoughts regarding how might we train you know, future leaders and future researchers and scientists?
Thanks, Abby. When I listen to all the panelists, many fun thoughts coming up. In particular, because I'm a lawyer, right? And then when I heard of Aino talking about public health, that's more like social science, where Venyao is more like to the engineer side. So I was even thinking how might we really try to work together as, you know, from natural scientist, engineer, then our social scientists and humanities. So coming back to the question in the Q&A box, I would rather want to address one of the key issues. That is, we learned that over the past 2.5 years that we went through the pandemic, right? And so many things have changed because you cannot work in a silo or within your own discipline. And we also have been learning that transdisciplinary research is also important. And when we learn from Jenny Lind that there are many kind of programs that try to encourage young scientists or even well-established scientists to work across the field. But nonetheless, I see that it's also important to promote inclusivity among scientists from different regions and continents. Because if you want to train the future leaders, you also need to really learn how to work with people, right? Despite which area you are from. So it's more like human communication, and you need to learn to understand other people. Like I know mentioned that you need to be able to commit and to listen to others, and that is more like to the another kind of skill set that future leaders need to learn. And like last 2 months, Abby and I were working very hard to host the early to mid-career science leadership program for the young scientists from APEC region. And it has been very successful because we learned that after learning that people cannot travel for a few years, then when they met, it became such a kind of fruitful week program that we tried to see how might we really try to promote the early to mid-career to be our future leaders across the disciplines and across the region. So to make it short, for the interest of time, I would rather say that despite you work in the universities or you work in the research laboratories or even a private sector, it's important to really try to promote more inclusivity because that is the way that you learn to work with people from different disciplines. And whatever crisis that would hit us, is going to be us who really are ready because we learn to work with other people. That would be my just brief answer to your question, Abby.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning to appreciate, that everybody has a voice, but also the fact that just like how COVID-19, when countries raced, to get the fastest vaccines, to get more vaccines to protect its individuals, it suddenly realized, or its citizens, it suddenly realized that that alone was not enough. That we have to make sure that that equity, was actually balanced out throughout the world. And it's the same thing with science. The conflicts, we didn't have time to talk about the role of science diplomacy and the role of diaspora in this particular area, the role of science diaspora, scientific diaspora in the promotion of harmonization of science advice and scientific dialogue to ensure that greater world peace and harmony. The idea that science, as a tool to bridge can only be materialized if we actually have more researchers, more scientists, like the 4 people that we have heard from today, who do not necessarily see themselves as a citizen of one country, but actually a citizen of a purpose, and a purpose that transcends those boundaries. I know that we have run out of time, and there's so many things that we want to put out there. So I'm just going to give 30 seconds to all 4 of my amazing speakers today to tell us if there was one call for action for SASTA 2022 and everyone listening in. What is it in the context of how might we leverage the diaspora networks out there for the promotion of science in the region and beyond? May we start with Dr. Orakano?
Sure. So because as Abby has mentioned about my profile, I have been working with the minister at the moment, and also been in part of the team to host the Global Research Council Asia Pacific meeting that's going to be hosted in November. So I might just to call for an action, I might also try to address to those coming visitors from many funding agencies within the region that is so important that we might also want to promote. Again, inclusivity of scientists, not just scientists within the countries, but the diaspora as well, because it's important and it's the right timing for us to really work hand in hand to work together And that's one of the things that we should voice to the funding agencies. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dr. O. Dr. Lee?
Yep. All right. Well, 30 seconds. All right. So I think my one-liner would be to think beyond papers. We really need to be looking at getting the research out there. So how to do it is to leverage on the international network to get your research out there into adding into actions, solutions, or products, and look at the network that you have, see who has done it, see who has gone through that process, ask them how they do it, and if you can get the support for that. So yeah, think beyond the papers. It's more than just citations. Really get your research out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Wen Yao. Dr. Aino?
I would say be consistent. So I'm actually adding on to what Wen Yao has said. Thinking beyond just the papers, you have to be consistent. You have to commit and you have to be consistent. Yes, there are times that you may feel a bit demotivated, but we need to consistently have this collaborative kind of work, like what SASTA is doing. If we can continue doing this on a yearly basis or even monthly, or, whatever that we have planned to do, whether big or small, consistency.
Brilliant. Consistently answered. And now we'll go to Dr. Jenny.
Yeah, well, this is a global conversation, but it really needs global action, but it also needs local solutions. So we have to have like a big rethink. I think more, we have to look at the success indicators, are they still relevant, or do we need to change that? We also have to really open up, have more intersectoral, intergenerational discussions and action points that really include everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jenny. On that note, let me, on behalf of the organizers, express my sincere gratitude to all 4 speakers for really sharing with us your perspectives, wisdom, and aspirations. To all members of the audience today, thank you for participating. I know that you come from all kinds of different regions, and it's been a thorough, sorry, Mawar, you can also switch on your video. Thoroughly engaging, and I hope that you have enjoyed it as much as I have. And thank you so much, SASTA, for giving us this platform today.
Thank you, Dr. Abhi, and thank you for all of our amazing panelists and for the audience. Thank you so much. It was an amazing and inspiring session. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.